That is, mission needs to, and I would say this for all of us involved in church work, but in every other work, is that if we represent the mission of God in all things, it's going to become much more complex. In order to communicate the gospel meaningfully, the local church outreach and picnic and outreach service ain't going to cut it any longer. You're going to have to adopt a cross-cultural mission methodology in the Western context. This is becoming clearer for us as we kind of engage. Another thing, we play around with this one over here. If I said that the church stands over there at this place in society, that at M0, and you could put your little face there if you want, like that little happy face, then in a sense the church reaches well within its cultural orbit. The church as we know it, folks, the church that we live out of, the model or the idea of church that we most adopt, actually comes from an era in society where we pretty much had the center point in society. And increasingly now we find, so it has a kind of resonance within its own cultural orbit. That is, everyone within its orbit speaks its own language, it's the same socioeconomic groups, that there's no significant barrier to cross to speak meaningfully within this group. So here's the thing, is that you could say that the attractional church, that the church that relies on people to come to it in order to hear the gospel, the one that we most rely on in Western context and in this country, does work well within this orbit. There's no question about it. It is significantly vital within us, particularly the contemporary church, which seeks to be relevant to people within its own cultural orbit. But I would say this, that attractional, and I have to be responsible for defending the term because I probably introduced it to the parlance, is to say attractional church, that is a church that expects people to come to us in order to hear the gospel and to be kind of introduced into the Christian story, does work. There's no question about it, but only where people are within the cultural orbit of the church. It becomes more problematic when we go over here. That if, let's say, we are the same thing, start again, and we're trying to reach to a person over here that somehow through maybe a work experience, someone in a church is sharing faith with someone who is quite significantly distant from the church. Here's what actually happens. If you reach out to the person, bring him to church, that is the attractional mode over there, bring him to church, and what actually happens, it works. The person can be socialized into that context and can actually find a vital home to belong. So this is what will happen. The person actually goes and hangs out over there. Now, that's all good and well. The problem is that if you do this very well, this is what happens. You socialize them out of this context over here. They are now socialized into that. In fact, the more sexy your church is, the more you've got kind of people, all friendships are changed and exchanged. There's a language, we church them. We have a culture, I don't know if you know that, and we expect them in this attractional model, they've got to do the cross-cultural work to come to us. By the way, we as missionaries ought to do the cross-cultural work the other way. We're expecting people to come to us on our terms is to ask them to do the cross-cultural work, which is actually quite a big ask. And so it's quite a difficult thing for them to do. Now, attractional, I would say, in a missionary environment, so this works, remember, I'm saying I affirm it. In a missionary environment, however, is extractional. I wish I'd used the word extractional instead of attractional. Because it's not that I'm saying we shouldn't gather, and it's not saying I'm thinking we shouldn't be attractive in our expression of our Christian faith. It's just that I think we shouldn't be extractional. Because when you take people out over here and you socialize them over there, you no longer can reach to people over here. And this has a whole lot of problems for us. Problem 101, it's contrary to the incarnational impulse. Incarnation implies cross-cultural dynamic. We go and live among a group of people. We communicate the gospel within. This is what Jesus showed us. What God shows us in Jesus is that you go and hang out with people, so you communicate from within a culture. And that's very important. I mean, we all appreciate that somehow we've been reached within our own cultural framework. We didn't have to become something else in order to kind of love on Jesus. And then it violates the sentness of the missionary calling of the church that we ourselves are called to go. By the way, we are called to be a sent people, to go among them and to kind of communicate faith in them. And the other, of course, it's a problem if you're thinking movements, that is how viral ideas spread. If you bring everyone into the same place and socialize them there, you no longer can spread the idea beyond that, because you basically cut off people from their natural environments. You get the idea? There's a whole lot of other problems with this, and I've got to rush. So, can you get that one? So let's move on that. Now, here what I want to do is to kind of put this within a framework of some research that was done in South Africa, in Australia, where they did a whole lot of kind of stuff on the church and on non-Christian people and what they thought. It was very thorough research, and I was part of the group that was invited to interpret the material. And not being a statistician or the son of one, but I do follow kind of trends and try to understand what's going on in my country. The 4 categories that were asked to kind of, people were asked what they think about it is, come on, God, Jesus, spirituality, and the church. And this is general. Now you've got to think this for your context, right? So think in your own mind, people will ask, what do people think about God? Now this is post-Christian, post-Christendom Australia. 90% plus believed in some idea of God. Now it wasn't like a Christian understanding of God necessarily. In fact, a lot of it wouldn't be. It was a higher power kind of stuff, or principle of the universe, whatever, but a lot of people believed in God, so that actually gets a good check. Jesus, when they were asked about Jesus, most people actually thought he was pretty good. In fact, it comes up pretty well. I'd love to play with that a little bit more, I don't have time. Spirituality, most people said that the search for meaning, significance, purpose and belonging was important in their lives, and in fact it's one of the biggest areas of reading in your local bookshop. And it's true, of course, in your country as well. What do you think happened over here? Now, in our country it comes up pretty bad because of our history, but I think it's true even of your own country that most people, when they think about the church, don't have exactly positive reactions at first. Remember, this is a non-Christian, explicitly non-Christian audience. So here's the problem, folks, and this is a problem for each and every one of us who at least deal with the church, for us churchies among us over here, is that leverage is found. If you're going to change everything, you're going to have to change this. I would say if I was in business, you've got a darn good product down here. I mean, the basics are intact. I mean, people don't fully understand everything there, but the basics are intact. Here's where change must take place. Your delivery system is pretty stuffed. You better get your delivery system up or you'll be out of business very soon. Let me play this a little bit further. Speeding along. I'm going to use that kind of stuff and say from our census in Australia, we discovered that 18% of Australians go to church regularly. When you ask about regularly, it's about once a month. Let me take out from that 18%. The kind of nominals, and the church that we know is not doing well is the kind of mainstream, mainline churches, the kind of high church stuff. So let me subtract them out of the equation, take them right out, and end up with a church that is carrying the burden for mission in my country. And you'll recognize it, because we basically get it from you. This church is doing quite well. Come on now. Don't disappoint. The contemporary church growth model. And it is effective. And it's pretty much carrying the burden of mission, doing most of the work. Here's the thing. So this is not a critique of it, it's just simply saying it is doing. When we look it up against Australian population, and remember, it's not attendance. In fact, attendance in all Pentecostals, charismatic, evangelical churches it's actually less than 3%, it's 2.7%. Let's make it 3. It's not attendance. I would say it's cultural appeal. This would appeal to people within our broader population. I guess there's about 12 to 15% of Aussies who would think this is all right. People here look like the people there. It's a plus Jesus factor. They're people who don't abuse their kids, they pay their taxes, they're nice people. And basically this church has resonance, this style of church has resonance within that kind of setting. Is that fair? This is a guess. This is my guesswork, okay? I wish I had research to prove it. Let's go to the States and let's see. Come on. I guess in the United States where I've asked people this, they would say simply that it would have about 35 to 40% appeal. This is not attendance, we know that. Your researchers indicate quite clearly. The Pew report says 18%. Here's the deal. There's 2 problems that arise, and here's where I want to kind of nail us down. 2 problems. One that presents itself is what I call a strategic problem. Strategic because, and I can say this as a denominational exec for many years paying for my sins, right? Most of our churches in our denomination, once remember we've taken the traditionalists out. Those who are left over, all of those churches left in my denomination thought that this was the answer. Because all of them read the books and went to the conferences and all that stuff, and it's all variations of church growth. Here's the problem, folks, strategic problem. 90% of our churches in our denomination, which is kind of broad, kind of Baptist-y type denomination, wanted to become like that. If you maxed it out, if you made it work, then you're still only going to reach 35 to 40% of the population. That, my friends, is a strategic problem. Because if the only answer we've got is one reconfiguration of a variation of church growth theory in some way or form or another, no fundamental difference, no fundamental innovation of what we currently have, then all we do is we're doomed to repeat well, we're doomed to only be able to reach 40%. Now, let's say that's good. And I'll say the people who do this well, go for it. But all of us can't do it. We have to find a way to look at this other side of the equation, which is what I call a missional problem or a missionary problem. That 60% of your country, for whatever reason, will not go to this over here. So what are we going to do about people who find themselves within the 60%? What does church look like for them? And this is combined with a strategic problem. It's the missionary problem, because if you've got any heart for what is going on in America, generally speaking, this has to play in our consciousness. Because if we persist over here in more of the same over here, expecting it to achieve results over here, I think we're doomed to kind of just repeat the same problems that we've found. And that is the issue I'd like to kind of say a number of things about just before I close. So we have the kind of strategic problem. Here's the thing. We know the definition of organizational insanity, don't we? Trying to achieve significantly different results by doing the same thing better. Now, you can get results by doing the same thing better, but you won't get significantly or paradigmatically different results. This draws off Einstein's insights that the problems of the world cannot be resolved by the same type of thinking that created those problems in the first place. Let me repeat that for the church. The problems of the church cannot be resolved with the same kind of thinking that created those problems in the first place. Let me do this another way. If we were going to kind of say this, if you want to dig a hole over there, it's no good digging this hole deeper. You agree? Watch our behavior. Because this is exactly what we do. We're so vested in this hole already. So what we think is just one more dig over here and we're going to see revival's going to break out, all that kind of stuff, right? Because we tell ourselves, because we're deeply invested, what's the problem? If you keep digging over here, what actually happens? You get further into your hole, don't you? And so the problem is that we get further and further stuck or invested in this, that we can no longer do the kind of the hole over there. We just dig ourselves deeper into the hole over here. Folks, this is part of our problem. And part of our problem is a death of imagination. I'm here to try and invite you to think differently about the church, with the assumption that more of the same is not going to get the job done. I would say we should bless that when we do it well within the 40%. But of the 60%, and we know that the response to the kind of the church, the kind of the model I put up there, the contemporary model, would go something like this. And it's consistent between our both countries, that among the D churches say, good for you, not for me. It's kind of like blasé, right? The other side of it says, no, nay, never. I'm never going to go there. They'll abuse you, take your money, all the rest of it, right? Now, you're not going to reach them with, going back on that model, you're not going to reach them with more of the same. We have to have an alternative approach to add to what we've currently got. I'm not saying destroy or kind of negate what we're currently doing, but some of us here should make a move. Some of us should take a pioneering spirit and see what it means to do the church and be mission and to spread the gospel within the 60%. Because if we all persist in producing what we're currently producing, we're perfectly designed to achieve what we're currently achieving now. And here's the deal, and here's the challenge. And I know I'm finished, so you don't have to drag me off here. We stand at the dawn of the 21st century. And we are the generation that probably is going to determine something of the course of which this is going to take. Decisions we make now, my friends, my brothers and sisters, decisions we make right now will determine the course of the 21st century in terms of where the church will place itself, because the fact is we are on the decline. Christianity is on the decline. Even though the megachurch is growing, it's only in numbers. When you put it in the grand scheme, Christianity is on the decline in your country, and it's going to only get harder. You must make decisions now. You must invoke a missionary imagination and response. And some of us are better pioneer and innovate, genuinely innovate, in order to kind of maintain, not only maintain the church, but to go and make sure that we kind of thrive in the 21st century. Thank you very much.